Juanine, I see your spirit. Miskozikwe. Kichi nokomes adik sangab to them. I see your spirit. And here I am. It's been a weird few days. And I needed to comment on a few things that I think need a psycho-spiritual perspective. Say that fast, 10 times. I appreciate all your comments about my turkey medicine. What started out as a joke. This is how coyote medicine works. What starts out as a joke turns into something different. Because I'm surrounded by these ground eagles now, these turkeys. Every time I'm out back, they come by. And actually this morning I was sitting at my computer doing some supposed work, but I couldn't quite get my bearings. I hear all this noise out back, and so I look up my window by my computer, looks out at the tree where I put the oats down for the turkeys. And I didn't put any down this morning. I really don't particularly want to encourage them. I was just wanting to get pictures of the babies and trying to determine their gender, which I haven't been able to do yet. I can't seem to get close enough, or they're moving around so fast I can't follow them. I would have to pretty much pick them up, and I'm not going to risk that. Mama trusts me right now, and if I was to do something like that, well, turkeys have tempers. But when I heard all that fuss, I looked up and I realized, I hadn't put anything down, and this one hen was really giving me what for. They have personalities, obviously. So she was telling me that, they wanted the free stuff, and sorry, that's over with. I think my backyard at one time was a ancient trail, because they come from the forest across the street and down a ways, and the creek where they seem to get their water and probably go fishing because they're omnivores, is down on my other side. When I'm sitting out, it's on my left side. The forest is on my right side. And they come right through my backyard all the time. There didn't used to be a fence there. That's a fairly new addition. But I like it because it kind of gives me privacy. They don't seem to mind it because they go under it. And they just go right through my yard. And that's what started the whole thing. So I think it was probably a turkey trail long before it was my backyard, because they seem to know it and feel fairly comfortable. When they cross the street, they're usually running, as Forrest Gump would say. But when they're over here, they're just chilling and finding insects and other things to eat. So far I have 4 turkey feathers. I'm going to make myself a nice little ceremonial smudging object out of them. And I've got some leather to wrap them with, so that'll be a project. The other thing that kind of had me in a funk the last couple of days was the shooting at Fort Stewart, Georgia. That felt a little personal because I have been to Fort Stewart several years ago and gave a talk to the incident commanders and the first responders there on the base and in the community about critical incident stress management. And it was very well received. It's posted here on my Facebook page. And it seems like they took a lot of things to heart because their response so far has been very, very good. Unlike Fort Hood, which I was also involved in, where the response was about covering up and gaslighting and really re-victimizing the victims, several of whom I know personally. And one of them actually messaged me yesterday as this Fort Stewart thing unfolded, like deja vu, it's happening again, right? Nothing can cause a reactivation than a similar circumstance. The violence on the military bases is a concern. And when you train people for war, how then do you expect them to live in peace? That's the question. We take these young people and we put them in our military, and whether you're a clerk or a foot soldier, you get some of the same basic training on how to handle situations that have gone south. And it's obvious from the Fort Stewart shooting that they took things in hand right away and stopped the shooter. And those are the people I want to hear about, not the shooter. You can bury him somewhere in the back page. But I know he has issues, obviously. He'd been likely some alcohol issues, just had a DWI, was pending a court case. And so what kind of crossed my mind when I put all these pieces together, was he a kind of a suicide by cop situation? I mean, he had to know, being on an army base, although the average soldier doesn't carry weapons, that there are MPs around, and was he hoping that he would be shot? I don't know. It's an open question. But to go on an army base with a personal arm, sidearm, and start shooting really begs the question of the mental state of this person. And the fact that the commanders in his unit didn't know about the DUI. I'm waiting for all this to unfold about how this happened. And hopefully it won't be a state secret the way that they kept the Fort Hood secrets. And that this guy gets what he deserves, but also gets the help he needs so that he doesn't spend the rest of his life behind bars. Obviously, a dishonorable is likely to ensue, but that doesn't mean that they should drop the ball and trash him either. So I'm kind of, all these questions going through my head, and in talking to my dear friend from Fort Hood, we hadn't talked in a long time, but nothing brings up, I don't know quite how to say this. You know, it's like you have those friends where it doesn't matter how long it's been. You pick up right where you left off. That's kind of what happened. That kind of describes it. And I felt comforted by her, and I hope she felt comforted by me. Because it was something, the aftermath of Fort Hood, we went through together. And, you know, she doesn't like to be called a hero. She was the sergeant that stopped the Fort Hood shooting by shooting that major. She was shot herself. And I held her hand at times as she's going through recovery where everyone else was dropping the ball. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole nother session. But I'm glad to see that they're handling this a little differently in Fort Stewart, and maybe some of what I said to that community and to those first responders and those commanders that day played a little bit of a part. So history repeats itself. It's weird, isn't it? If we don't learn the lessons. And that's really the topic that's been on my mind, about the shadow, about the Mitote, about the devil, about these people and institutions and things that whisper in our ear all the time, that gaslight us all the time, that undermine our self-worth and self-confidence all the time. There was a discussion on Facebook about advertising, and my comment was, all advertising is gaslighting, because they're telling you you're not okay where you are, that you lack something, that something's wrong with you, unless you use this product that they have, and then you'll be fine. Think about that. That's you hear that all day, every day. And then today, going across my news feed, the story about these grocery stores that have been overcharging people for years by not changing the stickers on the shelf, so you think you're buying something at one price, but it rings up as a higher price. And unless you're real studious about checking your sales slips, your receipt, you won't catch it. I know that's happened to me a few times, and I've gotten a whole lot better about checking my receipt. But it still happens, and I'll realize it when I get home. And, you know, sometimes I let it go if it's not too much. If it's more than a couple bucks, I'll go back and say, wait a minute, this was your advertised price, and this is what I was charged. And they refund it. They don't even argue. It's just it takes the effort, right? And they bank on the fact that you won't make the effort lots of times. So this is the Mitote. This is the shadow that follows us around from outside that comes in. But what about the one that's inside and goes out? It's time we make friends with our shadow. And I say that because a lot of people are, I don't want to look. I don't want to see that I've made mistakes. I don't want to know about my faults. I would rather be ignorant. Ignorance is bliss, right? Unfortunately not, because ignorance is where anxiety and depression and a lot of mental illness and stress comes from. So the least you know about yourself, the more unhappier you'll be. So I'm going to suggest that we start making friends with our shadow self. That we have to understand that The shadow is the path to our transformation. Let me say that again. Knowing our shadow is the path to our transformation. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And until you acknowledge your patterns that keep repeating, okay, like history repeating itself, our personal history repeats itself until we are aware of the pattern that is repeating. And that's one thing I really learned from Jaguar medicine this past year, was identifying that pattern for myself. Became a real tool of transformation, of being able to renew my mind about a lot of things and settle my mind. Remember being transformed by the renewing of your mind? Yeah, it's all recognizing these patterns. It's all accepting these patterns without judgment. The patterns aren't good and bad. We don't need to judge them. We just need to acknowledge them and where they came from and where they got set up and how we keep repeating them. The particular pattern I really became aware of was betrayal. That's true for a lot of people because we don't recognize it. And I'm going to go into that in more depth, but this is just the overview. When the patterns of our life keep repeating, if we keep being a victim, especially a victim, if we keep finding ourselves in situations where we're coming up short in some way, these are things that we need to recognize because they got set up at a very early age. And one of the best lines in a movie, I always come back to movies because these writers hit a lot of stuff, was in a movie with Robin Williams and Matt Damon, where he said, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And that's the breakthrough moment. It's not your fault. And that's the same way with your shadow. We're afraid of it because we believe we're at fault. But it's not your fault. It's a setup. It's a mitote. It's like someone drilled a hole in your brain and filled it with these lies, filled it with things that really have nothing to do with you, but are there to control you and to control your thought processes and control your behavior and control your choices. That's the mitote. That's the Toltec word for shadow. Okay? They're the one and the same thing. So I want to encourage you to relax a little bit. To say, okay, Creator, I'm ready to see my patterns. I would make this a prayer. You can call it Jaguar medicine. You can call it Jungian therapy. Call it what you want. The result is the same. I am ready to see my patterns so that I can transform into the spirit within that I am, and not the frail human that I've been told I am. I want my personal power. I want my personal story. I want to be able to serve you in the way I was intended. I'm ready to see my patterns. That's what we look for in therapy, you know. I don't pay much attention to he said, she said, because everybody will have their own little Mitote story to tell about why it's the other person's fault. I look for patterns. And I've said this before, but something happens once, something happens to you or with somebody once, it's an incident. Something happens twice, that's the same type of thing. It's time to really pay attention. Really pay attention. If it happens 3 times, it's a pattern. And patterns are significant. You know, even baseball recognizes that. 3 strikes and you're out, right? Well, 3 incidents is a pattern. I even sometimes stop at 2 because the propensity is there. So when I'm dealing with people, I don't so much listen to words. I watch for patterns. And that way I see what's true about that person. You can lie to me verbally. That's okay. You're the only one you're hurting, because I don't take it at face value. I'm looking for the patterns of behavior, the patterns of thought, even the patterns of speech, the patterns of your movements, the patterns of your relationship. I'm looking for patterns, because with the patterns lies the truth. So I'm encouraging you now for this cardinal hour or half hour, as it may be, to make friends with the patterns in your shadow. There's your freedom. When you cast light on those patterns, they're no longer hidden, they're no longer in darkness, and they're no longer determining the choices and the circumstances of your life. You want Ogi-Chagwan. You are a spirit, Lord, a spirit within first and foremost. And the shadow and the patterns are things that have been added to you that are not of you. And in order to be who Creator intended us to be, we have to recognize and shed those things and be willing to give them up for our own transformation and well-being as a spirit person living on this earth. So I'm going to leave you with that for today. This morning, I don't know, I've got this critic karma going on. Like I was talking about, even this morning, I was sitting out with coffee and the chipmunk coming right up to me. Oh, gathering acorns. There's an oak tree out here. I think that's a lot of what drives some of these animals, because they all eat acorns. And so we had coffee together this morning, and I made a reel out of it because he was so cute. And I remember as a young girl, the chipmunk song. Yeah, I'm dating myself. Yeah, but you can still listen to it. Yeah, Alvin and the Chipmunks. So I have my own little Alvin out here. So I made a reel. And at the same time, one of those squirrely squirrels that I call Timothy Leary because they eat the mushrooms out here, came right up, sat right next to my foot, and I'm just sitting there. I'm not feeding them. They're not afraid of me. I'm not afraid of them. We just seem to be all getting along with this critic karma. And we'll see what shows up next. I'm kind of, the owls showed up, if you remember, right, a few weeks ago. So maybe in the fall, maybe the deer will come for the acorns. I know they're here. I just haven't seen them this summer. We shall see what shows up. Stay tuned for the next episode of Critter Karma. Bemape. Have a great day.